Welcome to We Are Human Leaders. We're so excited to have you here with us, and we invite you in to be part of the global community driving change. Each conversation on this podcast is an invitation to grow, to question, and to co-create a future where people, business, and society can flourish together. Here at Human Leaders, myself, Alexis, and my co-host, Clarke, are your guides on this journey, connecting you to big ideas, bold conversations, and brave questions that will help you live and lead more human. So today's guest, Sally, can you tell us a little bit more about who we are speaking with?
Oh, this is definitely a conversation full of big ideas, bold questions, and some pretty brave and forthright answers. We're speaking today with Dom Price, who is a thought leader extraordinaire and also work futurist at Atlassian, where he's been working for around 12 years, now functioning as their in-house team doctor. So really solving some of those fundamental issues that distributed teams face when they're scaling by being really ruthlessly efficient and effective, but also very human. He's also spent some time helping customers navigate transformation, agility, leadership, the future of work. And this is definitely a conversation that I think is going to answer a lot of your questions about that sort of magical, nebulous concept of the future of work too. It certainly did for us, didn't it, Lex?
Absolutely. And probably one of my favorite things about Dom is that he's never shy on a spicy take. So we certainly asked him the hard questions around where he felt the future of work was going, what it might look like in the next decade. And we were greeted with answers that we did not predict. So
It's probably a conversation that could have lasted 10 hours in that every question we asked and every answer he gives, we have 10 more questions because there's just so much to it. It's a dense and fun conversation. Let's delve in.
Welcome to We Are Human Leaders, Dom. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. And we want to dive in.
I'm excited for this. This is going to be a fun conversation.
It's been a long time coming. And we want to start, Dom. Can you tell us, what do you think has changed or not changed in the world of work since the pandemic?
Good question, because actually within that, there's a few quite violent swings, right? I feel like there was this catalyst of wartime response in the pandemic where we suddenly opened our eyes to things that previously we'd said were impossible, suddenly became possible. And actually what we didn't quite understand was how simplistic that was because it was wartime. There weren't many, it's like for knowledge workers, there weren't many choices. It was like you are restricted. And so what's happened since, as those restrictions have dropped, old school management behaviors have crept in, right? And not just those, but I remember doing some research late 2020, early 21, the highest growing segment of software sales was surveillance software, right? So it honestly, it makes me, I don't know if it's laugh or cry. It depends on the day. But if you just
both.
if you just hold those two opposing views in your head at the same time, in the last 5 years, record amount of research and conversation around psychological safety, highest selling software, surveillance. It's no, Sally, I completely trust you, but I'm just going to check every keystroke because in my mind, if you're whacking that keyboard, you're doing some work. And so what it showed was these, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, prehistoric management beliefs that are scarily sticky. They're still around, and it kind of needs Planck's law. It needs that generation to move on or see the light. Some of them have seen the light. The rest just need to move on so that the new way of working can actually thrive. Because right now, I think it's being hampered. So my prime example here is, and maybe it's just my LinkedIn feed and it's designed to stress me out, but on a daily basis, I see this should people work from home? Should they be in the office, right? Why are we debating that when in reality, I reckon 95% of the businesses I work with are distributed. Even if they're all in Australia, they're in different states. So the muscle you need is how do we work in a distributed fashion? The argument we're having is you need to be at home, you need to be in the office. You're you're missing the point. So I think we made advances. It's a little bit like a Paula Abdul song. I'm going to check the generational awareness of you two and your audience. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah.
Right? We've made 1 step forward, but the effort we expanded was 3 steps, and then we kind of got dragged back 2. I think the flip of that is, I think that's the thing that needs to change. It's not that we make the wrong 3 steps. We just need to stop throttling it back. We just need to kind of trust ourselves that we can evolve into a better way of working.
Yeah. And Dom, you raise a good point there, because I think what it alludes to is, I think we're asking the wrong questions. Should we work from home? Should we work from the office?
Yeah.
Shouldn't the question be, how do we get the best from our team and what's best for them? And let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a phrase we kind of cheesily throw around called vocation over location, right? We care more about how you work and less about where you work. And it's not that I don't care at all about where you work. I have certain guardrails in place. So with my team, we aim for 3 times a year. We're spread across Europe and US and me in Australia. So 3 times a year, we gather in the same country somewhere, and we use that time to build connection, bonding and belonging. We do high fidelity work in that moment. It might be strategic. It might be solving a brand new problem we've not solved before. And we build that trust and rapport that we then utilize almost like a catalyst over the following 2-3 months. And you can feel it just drop, right? Week by week, it just drops a little bit. And then we meet again, right? But the important thing is when we meet, it's not to do email or to get in documents or to present to each other. It's to bring that rich tapestry of who we are and do something we can't possibly do apart. And when we do that, that gives us that connection. In that world, I don't care if Sven, my guy in Germany, I don't care if he's in a WeWork space, or if he works from home or a coffee shop. I trust him as an adult to find the spaces he needs to do the work he needs to do when he needs to do them. And so it's not Monday is an office day, Wednesday is a team day, and a Friday is this. Like, don't dictate to me as an adult that you're telling me you trust me, but I have to connect with my teammates Wednesday at 3:00. And you're like, makes no
that's
sense.
a little,
right?
That's completely incongruous. And I think it's that kind of, the distaste that we have, a lot of leaders have for, anything being this kind of ongoing journey, which I think to some extent work is kind of like nature in that way. It's always going to be organically moving. It's like leadership. It's not a one and done, but we're still, when we're asking questions like how many days should we be in the office? It's like we're looking for that one and done switch that we can just lock in, and as if that will solve all the problems and then we can get back to work. But I think we need to sort of reframe how we think about collaboration in that way, as being this ongoing process of shifting. And if we can't get comfortable with that.
Sally, it's funny you mention it, because that evolution is a fascinating thing that I think, like if I think about the hardest leaders I'm working with right now outside of Atlassian, they tend to be legacy organization, 100, 150-year-old org, right? Lots of history and heritage and enterprise and scale. Like, it just feels hard to change. The thing that, like, I get the same questions from them, and it kind of makes me chuckle and a little bit curious at the same time. Like, what's the best practice? Singular, and it's got to be the best. And I'm like, well, you can go and do a study tour of Spotify, go and hang out with Meta, go to Google. You can come to Atlassian. We bear no resemblance to you. So you're not doing music streaming, you're not running Facebook, right? And you're not building software tools. Like, you're your own company. So why not build your own identity? And to your point, Sally, evolve that. Like, how does that evolve over time as it mirrors what's happening in the world? That's a useful exercise. Go and spend as much time as you want in Silicon Valley. You're not there. So why do you want to mimic that? And also, they mimic the wrong parts. Like, they buy a few beanbags and speakers and chalkboards, and they think it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, Dom. And it's interesting because we've worked with, in Australia specifically, some legacy companies in certain industries, for example, government and healthcare, that tend to have very bedded down systems and very high walls around how they work, why they do things a certain way. And I think a lot of leaders specifically don't understand which of those walls need to be torn down and how they then keep that sort of iterative process of reassessing how we work, why and where alive.
Yeah, it's funny. So again, that comes to like anything that starts with department, right? Or any sort of government agency, also anything that has a high compliance bar, right?
Yeah.
And so what we find is that compliance becomes the currency of the organization. Right. And if that's your currency, that's what you reward, it's what you recognize, what you do performance reviews on. You're like, hey, Alexis, you didn't break anything this year. You exceeded expectations. And you're like, I literally did nothing. Like, I just kind of bunkered down. And so we've inadvertently rewarded process following and adherence in a world where your returns are based on adapting. So you're like, cool. The most successful companies I'm working with right now are the ones with high learning velocity. They adapt quickly. That's not about compliance or adherence. Now, they still comply and they adhere. That's just the lowest bar.
Yeah.
Right. And so it becomes this thing about going, Please don't tear down the compliance wall. That's actually quite important. But if you thought about renovating it, right? If you thought about maybe putting a few little gaps in it to let some air through and some light through, like I'm not saying throw anything away. And this is where leaders get really worried, that they hold on to this history and they're like, but if we stop doing that, we might die. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying stop everything. Stop the things that are no longer valuable in the current world that you're in and add in new things, right? Versus just blindly following the way you used to do it because it used to work. And I'm not saying it didn't work. It used to in that old environment. You're not there, you're here. So either make it work here or even better, make it work there, which is where you're going next, right? That's a little bit too much for most leaders. I'm like, just make it work today and I'll give you a brownie point.
And I think for a lot of leaders who are sort of, impressed on that sort of, future orientation, term that comes up a lot is AI, strategy AI is going to fix everything. Now, you've described AI, I think very accurately, as a tool and not a strategy. I loved the phrase, it's like Excel, but angrier and faster, which just feels very visceral to me.
The reason I mentioned that, Sally, is I think right now it's been weaponized rather than valued, right? It's been used as a weapon versus going, hang on, like pause. How do we want to utilize and unleash this beast?
Can you say more about that?
So I think whenever anything comes along in the popular zeitgeist that just kind of dominates the world, it's very easy to go either this is wonderful, it solves all the world problems. Sally, Alexis, get out of my way. I need to solve the world's problems. And you're like, oh, if you're going to solve the world's problems, off you go. Or you're the opposite and you're like, we're doomed. It's Black Mirror, right? The jobs are gone, our careers are gone, our families are gone. My kids will never learn to socialize. They'll never speak to anyone, right? And it's doom and gloom. And so it's like more about, can I convert you? And that's the worst thing we can do, right? What I think we want to be having is an intellectual conversation, right? We're in the early stages of rolling this out and understanding its capability and the risks, right? And the compliance that we need and the safety measures and all those things. So how do we have a conversation about that rather than me go, I'm going to convert you to my way because this is right, and you going, no, you're wrong, right? So in essence, we've taken a political approach to AI. You're wrong, I'm right, rather than a conversation approach of going, we're both right. It is pretty scary and it's exciting, but both of those are possible. How do we make it so that it's less scary and a little bit more exciting, right? And how do we do that on purpose now, not in 5 years when we're all sat around a table going, we should have known. Yeah, it was doom and gloom, and now we have to go and fix it. So I think the timing's fascinating. It's just been weaponized because if you don't use the phrase, you're currently irrelevant. And that just feels a little bit disjointed to me because it's the wrong conversation again.
It's an interesting point, Dom, and it has been, I think the word itself is so polarizing. You're so right. There's almost like this for and against AI. And to sort of build on that political analogy you said there, I think it almost borders on preachy sometimes, whether you're for or against it as well.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes a message that is either very doom and gloom and everyone's losing their job and there's going to be robots walking the earth, or we're going to ascend to this new transcendent galaxy where AI is everything and will never do anything again. And it all feels very chaotic and terrifying and doesn't make sense, really, for a lot of us.
To your point, it's, and again, apologies if this is crass, but I said this to a mate over dinner the other week, so it's fair game for a podcast. I said, for me, AI is like teenage sex, right? Everyone talks about it. No one's actually doing it, right? And so, it's true.
We're not doing it well.
Not doing it well, right? But I remember being like 16, 17 and all your mates in the playground, you're like, yeah. And then you're I have no idea what that means, right? And it's the same in business forums. Like, I've built an agent and I've got a personal assistant and I'm doing this and I've saved like 100 hours alone this week. And you're like, did you? Because if you did, that's wonderful. What is the net benefit of that? Without using the phrase AI, what outcome did you achieve? Did you get product to market faster to better value? Or did you learn more? Or did you take time out of your day and week and you got balance? Like, tell me the thing you did with the saving. And they look at me blankly because there isn't any, right?
Yeah.
And so this is where we need this reality check of going, it's not bad or good. But I think what we have to maybe accept or understand is that the current system that we have was designed pre-AI, and what we're trying to do is jam this whole new concept into a system that wasn't designed with that in mind. And so we need some forethought just to pause and go, okay, if we were to redesign the system with with the nuances and beliefs of AI in mind around preserving humans, right? And us being more compassionate and the work that we could do, and more balance. And if you put all those beliefs in and you design a new system, what would that look like? Unfortunately, in the current economy, most leaders haven't got the time to do that. So they're like, cool, I'll buy the AI, I'm going to jam it in and hope that something magic unicorn pops out, which means what the magic unicorn they want is some random stat on efficiency and productivity. And you're like, okay, great. To what extent? Like, to what end? And also, the question I like to ask leaders is, what's the honest total cost of that? If you save half your headcount because you rolled out AI, what's the cost to society of that headcount loss? Where have those people gone? How have they been redeployed? How does that impact society? Because they're now not paying tax and they're not earning and they're not happy. Like, all those things have to be taken into account. So we look at this holistically, not I managed to get some bottom line by saving some headcount. I don't think that's the end goal.
I think that's a really important framing, Dom. And I don't necessarily think it's a responsibility entirely of an organization to have the entire sort of foresight for communities around what this is going to look like, because I think there's so many unknowns around this right now. And perhaps this isn't even the right question to ask. It's certainly the one we wanted to kind of get us to in this conversation. But a lot of the groups or a lot of the leaders that we work with typically are in middle management positions. So they can sometimes feel a little stuck around the change they are able to make, at what level they can really bring about drastic change as a result of AI. So I wonder, Dom, in your experience, perhaps within the team that you're leading or with some of the teams you work with, how and why should we be using AI at that kind of team level for perhaps collaboration and things like that?
It's a good question. We could extrapolate that, like aggregate out a little bit. If you drop AI from it, because I think AI is the current sort of tour de jour, but if you dropped AI from it and you said in the last 5 years or the next 5 years, what can a middle manager do to have impact, right? And I think that's a relevant question with or without AI. Because I think there's been a trend for years of middle managers going, arms folded, it's hard being me. And you're like, it is. But I also have a belief that, I don't know, most of the middle managers I've worked with, eventually, it doesn't take long for them to realize they've got a shed load more agency than they give themselves credit for. And I get it. They're down in the dumps. Things happen to them. You start to feel a bit near. And you're like, what's the point? I get it, right? We've all been there. We've all experienced it. Waiting for some unicorn in a throne somewhere to bestow happiness upon them, right? That's definitely not the strategy. And I mentioned that out loud because I think it's the one most people are waiting for. They're like, there's going to be a restructure, there's going to be a change or a transformation, or some consultants might come in and sprinkle dust everywhere. Like, they're waiting for it to happen. I'm like, history should tell you that's not, right? So let's work out what is within your control, what's within your influence, and what do you inherit? And I've done this with a number of leaders that I'm coaching right now. I'm like, let's be honest, what is actually within your control? And they list a whole lot of stuff out. I'm like, cool. What are you doing about that? They're like, well, nothing. There's no point. I'm like, hang on, right? If you're not doing that, you can't expect someone else to go first. So you go first within your control. Cool. Let's get that from let's say it's a 2 out of 5. Let's get it to a 3 or a 4. Doesn't have to be a 5 out of 5. I'm not saying be excellent, but like, so an example, one of the concepts I've been using for years now is the health of your team, right? We've got an exercise we run at Atlassian called the Team Health Monitor. It's published on our website for free. Any team anywhere in the world can do it. I'm like, you control your team's health. So ask them, how are we doing, right? You use your thumbs, you vote, you find one area, you improve it. And suddenly, you know what happens? The old shoulders lift, right? You're like, you know what? Maybe I can do this. And your confidence rises and it's more a can-do attitude. So you then look at influence. Who are the 2 or 3 stakeholders upstream and downstream that you're reliant on? And how can you build a high fidelity relationship with them? Not the whole organization. Stop thinking from within the middle, you can control the whole organization. That ain't going to happen. So settle for the 2 upstream and 2 downstream, because they're the ones that impact you the most. And even if that means in your bubble things get better and the rest of the organization is screwed, at least you're all right. Like, that's not a bad existence. You're like, I'm swimming here. Everyone else is drowning, but I'm good. Because that goodness will eventually spread, right? And then step 3 is to look at what you inherit. And again, how can you start to get ahead of the curve there? But that's step 3. I think people start with that step. They're like, here's what I've inherited from the organization. I'm done. No choice, like game over. And you're like, hang on, you've missed 2 buckets where you can have huge impact because you're sulking. And I don't think sulking is going to change any outcome.
Unfortunately, not if we could all use the toddler sulking approach. We would, and it would be, we'd all be fine. But
You can understand why people don't come back for a second coaching or mentoring session after the first one.
Well, I love it because it really centers us back in our agency, Dom. And I think that's such an important message for all of us. It's a lot of the work that we do at Human Leaders. It's also part of the models that we use for burnout prevention, because it's when we feel overwhelmed. And I think for a lot of us, chronic stress is something we might experience at work, but there's this kind of baseline of chronic stress almost at a sort of global level these days. Centering ourselves back in where we have agency and seeing the change that we can make, and then actually manifesting that in our bubble, is such an empowering step that we can take. And so, as you noted, like it sort of improves our own experience of life. And let's face it, it's going fast. Like let's make it fun while we can, and not wait for the powers that be to change things for us. But also it's role modeling, and it sparks that kind of idea in others, whether it's within the organization or it's at a dinner party with mates, that you can sort of bring that lesson that you're experiencing, the different approach that you're taking, and start to see that. And I think if we all focus on that kind of like smaller ripple effect rather than having to sort of change everything drastically, that's when we can really perhaps see some real momentum.
I'm with you. I'm quite anti the word transformation. Like, I am a recovering consultant. I worked as a chartered accountant for years. So I understand that transformation was created so that you could charge more for change programs, because change programs for 5 to 10 million and transformation is 20 to 40. It's the exact same slides, just, find and replace the word. So I get the notion of it. Unfortunately, the furore around that has created this bizarre hypocrisy that the only way to change is these giant leap transformations. Yes. So Sally, as a leader, if you decide to change, you need to completely reinvent yourself. And you're like, oh God, I might do it next week. I've got a lot on this week. Versus saying, you know what? Actually, in reality, the best way for you to change is to get 1 degree better every week. See, the problem is with that, when you get 1 degree better every week, you don't get a case study written about you. Yeah. Right? You don't feature in a Forbes article, you're not on LinkedIn, and there's no case study, because you just managed your own evolution and you matched where you need to be. It's way more fulfilling and it's way less stressful, but there's no story. Versus what we've started to glamorize in business and a little bit in society is this company was on its deathbed and now it's recovered. You're like, yeah, let's celebrate that. You're like, what about the one that just did well continuously? And because the one that just did well continuously isn't as sexy, it's not going to get the headlines. That's a diminished story versus the one that completely broke itself and then fixed itself. So I think we've inadvertently glamorized the failure to success rather than the I can maintain sustainable success.
That is such an important point. I mean, there's so many things. I know Sally's nodding because we had a conversation with a brilliant historian named Martin Gutman, who also looked at this through the lens of history and the people we celebrate in history. And so I think this has become really embedded and internalized in who we celebrate through time. And he compares Ernest Shackleton and his pursuits through sort of polar exploration age with Roald Amundsen, who is very much unknown through history, and his pursuits through polar exploration. Arguably far more successful, not arguably, is far more successful, avoided all major calamities and deaths to his team by just not doing anything chaotic and not taking the bulldozer approach to life, just adapting, relying on local knowledge through that exploration. And it's such a brilliant comparison of the two. And it's an important point. And what I think underpins it all, Dom, that's really important here is people separate the idea of driving change in an organization from, for example, behavioral change. And what we are effectively doing in an organization is asking tens, hundreds, maybe thousands of people to change their behavior. But at an individual level, that requires individual investment. So if we look at it almost like, what's the tiny habits that we're doing every day and how are they letting us down? And how can we maybe shift one tiny habit over a 3-month period, see how we go, and then maybe roll that out further? It makes what feels like a giant problem into just a tiny step forward. And I think it's more accessible and also more realistic.
Yeah, but I think so. So the contrast I'll give you there is, if you look at how most behavior change or change programs are led in organizations, they're led by a consultant, not by anyone from within the organization. Yeah. The consultant has a different currency. I need to show you immediate value so you pay my invoice. I'm going to create a dramatic burning platform, a dramatic change. You will pay me. I will exit. That change will no longer exist because it wasn't real.
Falls apart.
Theater. Because the goal was to create a moment, and you create the moment and there's the theater, the fanfare, and you go and you're like, we're just the same, are we? We're exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
So that's why there's this notion of like internalizing change programs that I've seen recently. It's interesting because, again, it's less dramatic, it's more sustainable, it's more personalized, but it comes back to the question of, have you got the bandwidth internally to do that? And if not, instead of outsourcing it, who can you partner with? So there's a few organizations I've been playing with recently, and one of them is taking the partnering co-design model. They're all ex-consultants from Big Four. They've formed their own business, but they go in and they're like, in the next 90 days, here's how we think we'll deliver value with you, not for you, with you. And if we haven't, don't renew our contract. And if we have, let's continue to play together. But you have to be with us in this, and we're co-designing, because if we come in with our best practice on a slide and tell you how to do it, you're as mediocre as everyone else we've seen, right? So that's not cool. So how do we make this sustainable and personalized is that co-design. But if you rely on the organization to do it, it's painfully slow. So you can accelerate that, but it's through partnership, not through outsourcing.
That's such an important message, I think, for so many of our listeners, Dom, because we know there's a lot of people who are very much focused on the human in this entire sort of conversation, and yet struggle because of these quarterly, KPIs that need to be hit and the metrics that need to be shown, and really weaving in that capacity to create something sustainable that is founded on, longer term relationships, I think is a really, really amazing approach. Now, we want to press you on a term that honestly, I feel like I've used this word already a gazillion times this year. I'm really over it, and I have a personal aversion to the concept of productivity. Not so much the concept, but just this kind of heaviness that I feel is inherent in the word every time I hear it, just in my own sort of personal journey, that there's some kind of expectation that if a day isn't productive by external metrics, then I've somehow failed. I'm putting that aside. I'm going to ask you.
So breathe, Sally, breathe.
Thank you. Center again. So productivity, it is something that we're seeing pretty much every day in the media, and this kind of stagnation of productivity. How do you define productivity for yourself and for your team? How should we measure it? Should we measure it? And do you think a leader's too focused on this word right now? Do we need to shift the narrative?
So I think we have to go back to the true definition of productivity to start, right? Which is a 1910, 1920s measure of a very mechanistic workforce where we were productive and we cared about productivity. If I could move the widget 1 degree faster along the production line, and it was human labor at that time, that made me more productive. I got more widgets out, I could sell more widgets, and I made more money. So there was a world where that was a very good measure of activity and a proxy for success. That ended in about 1960 or 1970. Unfortunately, the word has stuck around, and we continue to use it either incorrectly or scarily correctly. It's more scary for me when it's used correctly, when I'm like, oh, you're actually using it and you mean the 1920s version. It's not that you're ignorant or stupid. You actually are intelligent and know what it means, and you think that's what you want. That for me is scary, because I'm like, if you look at the knowledge workers that you have, the IP, the creativity, the innovation, the ability to adapt and change, right? If you look at all those layers, you want to be an effective organization. You want to be resilient. You want to stay relevant to your stakeholders, both the ones that you pay dividends or financial gain to, your customers, your suppliers. There's a whole network effect of how you need to do that. And so the reason it bothers me right now is it's very much an output measure, and at best, a highly outdated output measure, right? At best, right? You swing the pendulum violently and you go, if I was creating a net new organization today and I didn't have to worry about productivity because I had good stakeholders that were smart and sensible and savvy, what would I care about? How would I still drive the business to do the things that it needed to do? I've landed on a really dull but simple concept, which is input measures, output measures, and outcome measures. When I have all three, I'm successful. Input measures, do I have the right ingredients to start? Yay or nay? Am I starting with an intention to succeed? Do I know who I'm delivering to, what value is? Just the rough concepts and the guardrails. Still theory, still a bit gray, still a bit fluffy, but rough concepts. As I progress, I should get more confident. As I get more confident, I ship things, right? I ship assets or products or services or whatever that are part ready, and that is the output, right? A delivery of a thing. There's then the outcome, which is sod all to do with me and all about the impacts I have on someone else. And that happens 3 or 6 months after the event. So, if I'm doing a keynote talk, the input measures is, do I know who's in the audience? What's the mood? What's the vibe? What's the persona? What topics? Have I got the right content to build, right? I then ship the talk itself and I get a score at the end, 4.6. It's an output measure. The outcome measure is 3 or 6 months later when Alexis pings me and goes, off the back of listening to that, here's the action I took. And you're like, boom, there you go. That's it. That's the reason I did the thing, but it happens afterwards. And it's not me, it's you. So when companies have those three, damn, they're successful. Like, you can just see the mojo, you can see the flow. They start the right things, they stop the right things, they celebrate the outcome, but that, shipping isn't the end. It's merely a milestone. They track the breadcrumb, what worked, what didn't. We thought you'd use this feature more, you didn't, you used it this way. I didn't expect that. What can we learn from it? And it's a loop. So the best companies do it as a loop. The wrong ones are going, did you move more things this week? Were you productive? And you're like, what if I move things, but they're the wrong things? Don't care, you're productive. So it misses the mark. And I just think, I don't know what the alternative is. I can't find a good word that everyone can hang their hat on and go, that's the thing we should be measuring in 2025. I just know it's not productivity, right? It's not, it doesn't yield good projects. It doesn't yield good initiatives and focus areas. And it actually yields some quite weird counterproductive behavior that I actually think weirdly makes you less productive, right? There's a deep irony in that the pursuit of productivity will mean you take shortcuts, and in the long run, I think you're less productive.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Dom. And so it sounds to me a little bit like organizations are getting stuck in the output side of things rather than measuring the outcomes. I wonder, could you tell us what are some other sort of indicators that the outcomes are hitting the mark for what we need them to? Like, is it customer satisfaction? Like you said, that feedback coming in from people. What kind of things should we be looking for?
Yeah. Look, that's you've nailed it. That's the hardest part, right? It's someone else's measure of your value, not yours, right? And so, first of all, you have to give a shit. And second of all, you have to go and ask them, both of which are pretty hard. So you're like, so we deliver a new feature in Atlassian, we can go, we delivered that feature. It's now available to 10 million users. Cool. And that's true. That's technically true. It's available. Now, the outcome is we have a hypothesis that 30% of users should use that 50% of the time, and here's the way they should use it. So our job is to watch their behavior. We think we've delivered that behavior. Our job is to watch over the first 30, 60, 90 days, right? Track it. Maybe we made a mistake. Maybe the feature's too hidden, and we can roll out, we can do an A/B test. Like, it's never over, right? You can tweak it, you can adapt it. You get better usage, you get low usage. So you're experimenting, you're exploring until you land in a place where you're happy. But the happiness isn't the work that you did. It's the thing that happened after the event, the impact that you had. And when you see it, you're like, that was the impact we intended. So you're like, brilliant. So, we can build a collaboration tool. I can ship that to an enterprise that locks every document down because they don't trust each other, right? What I need to do is to get them to change their behavior and start sharing more. So it's not the release of the software that's my measure of success. It's, are you collaborating more? Right? Now, there's not a thermometer I can shove in them and go, you were collaborating at a 6.7 and now you're a 9.3. But you can sense, there's way more sense and feeling measures that we really don't give credit to, where you can really get a feel for if that's happening or not.
And I can't help but think, Dom, that it takes an inherent level of courage for us to seek that kind of feedback, to really hold ourselves open to it. Because if you've spent some time, energy, and a lot of, collaboration as a team into a new product and it goes out, hearing that it didn't land exactly as you expected, it can be incredibly valuable data, but it can be uncomfortable if that's not what you're expecting to hear. So I think there's like some real courage that we need to be bringing in those situations. And I can think it's a very micro level for individuals, but also the macro example you've just given.
I think it maps also beautifully to culture. Like, if I've got a culture of punishment, I will not bother tracking outcomes. I'll just track the output. I delivered. There you go. All you can hold me accountable for is I delivered, I shipped the thing. Give me 10 out of 10. I'm brilliant. Whereas, because I daren't go and ask how it got used because I know for a fact half the time I'm going to get a bit of data back that shows me a behavior that's different than I expected. In a great company, that's a chance to learn. In a bad company, that's a reason to get fired. It's the same data point, right? So do you exist in a company where sharing that, someone's going to go, oh, Sally, I'm so glad, great research. So how can we use this so we get better in the future? You're like, awesome, I'll share more, versus Alexis, you failed, you got that wrong, your hypothesis was bad, clear your desk, you're out of here, right? You're never going to share. So that cultural layer, people treat it as like a nice to have. That cultural layer determines how you treat that data inside.
I'm so glad you went there, Dom, because I want to double click on this and dive deeper into it. And that is I want to look at this idea of trust. Now, trust is something that we hear as a word used a lot by consultants, in organizations, by leaders, but I don't think there's a lot of understanding around what actually builds trust. So I want to know from you, Dom, you're walking into an organization and the trust in senior leadership is super low. Where do you go to first to start rebuilding that trust?
First thing is to ask why. I try and assumptions kill me every now and then, because once I make the first one, I make the second one, then the third, and then I'm on to assumption 20, and I'm like, I've solved it, I've solved the puzzle, and I just forgot to ask a question, so I solved the wrong puzzle. Haste and speed, like just pause, really understand why. I just ask why a huge amount. And it actually, to the point where it annoys most people that I work with, I'm like, I'm going to continue to ask why till I really understand the root cause here, right? What actually happened? Not the surface level root cause, or not your interpretation, the actual root cause. You're like, cool. And once you understand that, you can then start to track what behaviors happened after that. So the root cause is one thing, that's the trigger, that's the stimulus. What happened after that? And then I can start to understand, what was your role? And the reason I always like, it's a weird question 3, but whenever I have a leader of any level come to me and go, and it's normally a phrase, you will have heard it along the lines of, the problem in this place is management, right? And you're like, I just want to check, I think you're management. And they're like, oh, no, not me, the rest of the management, everyone else. And you're like, cool. So you're the one area that's fine and everyone else is toxic. This is fascinating. You've been here for 20 years. And so trying to understand like what behaviors have manifested and why might they have manifested. And what I'm looking for is, what's the currency of the business? Is it recognition? Is it experimentation? Is it innovation? Is it compliance? And actually just knowing that, it's funny, there's a lot of leaders I work with where I'm like, if you're not happy with that, you join the wrong company, right? They are unequivocally honest. They think they value more than anything else is compliance. So don't join there if you're a maverick. You're going to hate it, right? Like, find a place where you can be you and you can thrive. If you don't want to leave where you are, there's then this challenge of going, how do you think about rebuilding trust? And again, I think the mistake a lot of leaders make is they wait for someone else to take the first step versus going, how can I start to build trust? So again, I used the example before, right? There was some teams I was working with that were in a low trust environment. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do a bold thing here. Let's do a health monitor of your team and how they're performing. Let's show where that your team is struggling. Let's show the thing that we did to improve. Now let's show how we've improved. We're now scoring better. And now let's go and tell that story to other people. Because one of two things is going to happen. Either FOMO, everyone else wants to mimic it, you're the first mover, well done. Or you are the pariah and you've just worked out you're in the wrong organization. And it's not going to change, right? It's just, if that's the way it is, it's not going to change. So either accept it, stop whinging about it, because I'm not going to listen to you, or move on, right? To go somewhere where you can be you.
And I think at that point, there's almost kind of a healthy, I don't want to use the word recklessness, but kind of like liberty to kind of experiment. Because if you're saying things like, this is, everyone else is untrustworthy, I'm fine. Then if that's true, then you should probably leave. But before you leave, test that theory, gather some data, make sure you're really validating that before you claim to be,
But also, like Sally, like no one's got more human capital than the place where they're at now. So you're like, if you join a new company, you need permission to go to the toilet, let alone get paper and a stapler. Whereas where you are, you've actually got a little bit of latitude. So if you're going to experiment anywhere, if you're going to leave anyway, experiment there. If it works and it gets better, stay. If it doesn't, at least you tried it, and you're going to be really employable because you'll interview really well. And I want to call out the alternate behavior here. The people that interview for new roles that haven't tried to fix it in their current environment, I can smell them from a mile off, and I never hire them because they've got a story of the change that should have happened, but they weren't willing to do anything to contribute towards it, and they will not thrive in my environment. And so I can spot the The arms folded, it wasn't fair. They whinge about it. And you're like, oh, what did you do to try? And they're like, nothing. There was no point. And you're like, I don't know if I want you to just come and settle here and be mediocre either.
And victim mentality written all over you.
And that's where I was going to go. So I think it's such an important point, Dom, because I think we just outsource our agency in that scenario. Yeah. And it's both a learned sort of helplessness as well. We're continuously blaming those around us for the scenario that we're in, which feels awful for us. And it's just useless to the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a cycle, right? You just, and your energy changes. You change from can do to can't, and it's not fair. So next time a problem gets thrown at you, instead of going opportunity, you're like, happened again. And you're like, okay, once you're in that stage, it's just, you gotta find your own circuit breaker.
Now, Dom, if there was one leadership quality or skill that you think that all leaders now should really be focusing on, what would it be, and why? Where's the need?
I'm going to be greedy. I'm not going to pick one. I'm going to pick three.
Love it.
There's three front of mind right now. They might compete with each other, but there's three that I think are super, super crucial. One is storytelling. I think it's been on the rise a little bit anyway, but when I project forward, if I look at the current environment and I project forward, Alexis, you've talked about behavior change. We've talked about if we change from productivity to something else. We talked about AI, like huge amount of change. If I'm going to get people to change, I have to be able to tell a story that gets them excited and energized and focused on that change, right? Not this is happening to me, but I'm in this and it's going to be better. And I've got the agency we talked about before. And I think I'll let, like, whilst it might be hard, the destination's worth it. Like, you've got to have that. And that takes storytelling, which is not telling. It's storytelling, right? People are like, well, I told them what to do and they didn't do it. That's telling, right? If you add the story bit on the start, it's slightly different. There's more emotion. It's head, it's heart, it's hands, right? And it has to be authentic and credible and believable. So that's one that I think I've put a lot of leaders through it in Atlassian, and I continue to do it with people that I coach and mentor as just a universal skill we all need, right? And leaders especially. Second one is around, it's like package of like curiosity, empathy, exploration, that kind of stuff, to go, let's just assume that tomorrow is different than today. How do I get comfortable just doing that, just taking that stride and taking that step, and what do I let go of, and how does it help me get that sort of one step closer, right? And then the third one is, and it shouldn't be new, but I feel like it's just a genuine focus on people. I still think a lot of leaders that I work with are addicted to process and procedure and policy, which again is that compliance adherence side. You know what, Alexis, like what's going on with you right now? And like, how are you, right? And genuinely caring. And I'll give you an example. I had an exercise I used to run probably a few years ago with my old boss. He's no longer with us, where I did a quarterly reflection. Right? It was what have I nailed this quarter? We call them less positives. And then column 3 was personal. And then under that was a table with a fuel gauge of the 5 different areas I was focusing on. And there's the fuel gauge gone up or gone down, right? And it was a reflection on the last quarter and a promise for the next quarter. When I stood up my new team, they saw it, and I never asked them to, they started doing it. So we now do it as a regular practice. We now do it half yearly. And there's an openness to that in that sharing where you're like, I'm not a victim, Sally, to your point before. I'm going to share, this event didn't go so well. Here's what I learned from it. Here's what I'd like to do differently. And here's how I'm holding myself accountable and someone else. And you're like, it's a genuine care about people. Like, my biggest asset is my people. Like, I sell software. I make money through selling noughts and ones and code, but my biggest asset is my people. And if they're not thriving, nothing else is going to thrive, right? So having that balance is super important. And then the third one is the B word again, the balance, is I think the skill leaders need is, when's the right time to detach? When's the right time to detox? And when's the right time to double down, right? And you have to be really aware of your body and your soul and your mind and your state and your environment. You have to be like super, super aware to go, this is a double down moment. There's an opportunity. I've got the energy. I can see the moment. I've got the skill. This is a double down. You've got to have the time to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to detach from this one. This isn't for me. Someone else can take this, right? It's not my race to run. And then you've got the detox, which is I need to plug into an alternate energy source, right? Whether that be for me, it can be the kids. My alternate energy source is cooking, right? I do cooking for my wife and the kids. Like it's things that just fill a different cup. And it's funny because it's absolutely sod all to do with productivity, right? When I, like, just for anyone listening, when I finish this call with you, I'm going to go to the supermarket. Now I'm still being paid technically. I'm going to go to the supermarket, but I start the day early and I'll probably send an email tonight, but I'm going to go to the supermarket. I'm going to get some ingredients. I'm going to cook a nice dinner for me, my wife and the kids, right? And it's like, it doesn't make me more productive. Please don't try and measure that. It makes me a better human. And it's really important in 2025 and then in 2030 and that we know what it is to be human, because we need to stop competing with the bloody machines, let the machines do the machine thing, and we need to rediscover what it is to be uniquely human. And too many of the leaders I work with are robotic. Like, you've got a heart, it's in there, you're not the Tin Man, right? You've got a heart, bring it. And it doesn't make you weak, it makes you better.
Such an important point, Dom, and I love how you elucidate this wise discernment that I think we need to bring in a culture where the doubling down is kind of just baked in. It says always double down, keep going, go deeper, work harder. Having that wisdom to be able to really see and feel, as you said, in our bodies, in our souls, in our hearts. This is actually a time where I need to plug into something else. This is a time where I need to, find a different energy source. And I think that's such an important and inspiring and, message that I think everyone listening can take away to really, bring to those moments where you're automatically thinking, well, I'll just work through the night. It's like, is that really the best choice for me, for the people around me, for the outcomes that we're looking to achieve right now?
Yeah, like I don't imagine a gravestone for me that says Dom, like, was productive, like, worked hard through the night, like, highly efficient. Like, I don't want that written anywhere about me in an obituary or a gravestone or anything. So I'm like, if I don't care about those things, why am I stressing about them? Do I want to be a good dad and a good husband? And do I want to be happy? Hell yeah. Like, I don't want to be a good employee and a good team. I want to be all those things, but it's all of them. And I'm not going to pick one of them as the sole contributor to my life and my happiness and fulfillment, when actually it needs all. If I don't have a job and happy teammates and I don't enjoy it, I can't be a good husband, right? And I can't be a good dad because I'm a grumpy sod, right? So and I think it's like in life, we've tried to draw silos. Like, here's the work me and the social me and the family. You can't draw silos because they all interact with each other. I don't want to be 5 people on a given day. I want to just be me. And I wear a slightly different hat, right? Or a slightly different tone, depending on what I'm doing. But at the core, I just want to be me. And if you let me be me as a husband and a dad and a colleague and a teammate, actually, that's just taking a huge tax away. I'm not having to convert, and I just get to bring my true value and true self. You're like, why not?
Such an important message, Dom. And it's this compartmentalizing that we feel so compelled to do for so long now that I think is stopping us from really experiencing the depth and the richness of the human experience in the workplace as our whole selves as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first ever job at Deloitte. I used to, like, when I put the suit on and the tie and the compendium, like, I became a different person. There was like a work version of Dom, and I acted a certain way. At the end of the day, I'd loosen the tie and I'd leave the compendium in the office. I'd go for a drink with my mates, but they were kind of colleagues and mates, and slightly looser version. Then I'd get home and the suit would come off, right? Shorts, t-shirt. Then Maverick Dom comes out, and you're like, I'm having to maintain 3 people. This is exhausting. Like, and I get it. Like, I'm not saying take everything from your personal life and bring it into your work. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, know at your core who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, how you want to be remembered, how you want to turn up. Know those things and adapt to your environment, but be core to who you are. And it is not either or. I think with a little bit of foresight, we can do both.
Fully agreed.
Perfect. So, Dom, we want to know from you, the year is 2030. What has changed in the world of work and what has stayed the same?
I'll tell you what, one thing I think that's definitely going to have changed is the leaderboard will have been rewritten. Mm-hmm. I think we've gone through a long period of relatively consistent change. Like, even if I look at the internet era, it was the mechanization of things that were already partially mechanized. It just changed the curve. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think AI hasn't changed the curve, it's changed the game, right? And you're like, wow. So I'll give you an example. There's an Australian-based company that I work with that, let's just say that they're naming, they lend money to people, All right. And they may or may not be called lending. But it's fascinating because they would be classed as a small, medium business in the world of financial services. I know their CEO really well. One of the things they did when they looked at the power of AI was they were like, let's go through our last 3 years worth of business cases that we said no to and look at which ones work now we have AI.
Oh.
Ooh, yeah. Right. And he told me, and I was like,
Interesting.
and I had that moment, I'm like, what? And he's like, we may have said no to them because the ROI wasn't there, because it was human-based ROI. But maybe if it's agent-based ROI, maybe there's now margin there, and we can actually find addressable markets we would have said no to in the last 3 years because our cost base was too high that we now say yes to. So we're using AI to expand our business. I'm like, right now,
Brilliant.
in the same week I had that conversation with you, this is a true story. I was chatting to a CTO of a giant financial services company. And he's like, you know what, Dom? In the next financial year, we're thinking of looking at the possibility of trying an idea around maybe, and you're like, AI. And you're like, whoa, you're maybe thinking about possibly. Because the guy down the road, he's already done it.
Yeah.
And he's now attacking the market you're thinking of. Now, if you're the giant tech CTO in a huge bank, the margin that's been taken from it seems small today. And each day it'll seem small until it's gone. And then you're like, oh, it's gone, right? So the leaderboard's going to get rewritten because what I'm seeing is small, medium businesses and businesses led by people that just have that experimental, exploratory mindset. They're getting ahead because they're not waiting for the burden of proof. They're experimenting right now, but they're doing so with a customer-centric lens. There's a whole lot of people I know using AI because they like toys. Like they've been to the toy shop, they're like, I've got everything. I've got Gemini and ChatGPT, and I've got Claude, I've got Atlassian Rover, I've got everything. And you're like, what are you doing with it? Right? They're doing nothing because they've got everything. This is going, hang on. Where are my customers? How can I delight them? How can I look at this in terms of workflows? Where do I need people and IP and compassion? How do I partner them with agents? Like the ones doing it methodically and experimentally, brilliant. That leaderboard will get rewritten. So that's one thing. Second one's a hope, right? And you two are lovely people. So I just need to be honest with you. It's not a belief yet. It's a hope that we actually take some of the time saving that AI can give us and we reinvest it in people. I had the same hope with the pandemic that we'd stop the commute to work. And if I save 2 hours a day, that's 10 hours a week, that I'd get 10 hours back. What's happened is it's quite fair. I reckon Atlassian's taken 3 or 4, maybe 5 of those hours, and I've taken the other 5, right? So I've got some that feels quite fair right now. Feels equitable. With AI, we need to look at it. Is it the same thing? I'm not going to campaign 4-day working week. I think that's silly. But like, do we have to challenge the construct of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? And do we have an ability through technology to have a more fulfilling life where we have more time for society and community and friends and herb gardens, or whatever else we want to do, more time for that, and we can afford the lifestyle because we still have the income, right? That's a hope. It's not going to be a belief until I see some systemic change. And then the third one is that we actually find a way of focusing businesses on the problems people have, not the money they can make. And it's weird. Like I look at the arc of businesses, and it's hard to pick examples without offending people. But there's an example I saw recently around Google. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when Google first came out, and you'd get like a couple of sponsored links at the top.
Yeah.
But then that first page was the answer to the things you went looking for.
Yeah.
Now the first page is all sponsorship because they're not serving me; they're serving the advertiser.
Yes.
And so I go through 3 pages before I get the real thing I was searching for. So if you ever need to see an example of this, search for a telephone number for your favorite restaurant. You will get telephone numbers for 7 other restaurants that have spent more on adverts than that restaurant.
Yeah.
But you won't get the phone number for the restaurant you're actually searching for. So they've made it harder for me to get the information I want, but my inconvenience makes them money.
Yeah.
Right? Blockbusters, their inconvenience, right? The late fee made them money. So there's all these businesses where like, we're making a mozza from pissing off our customers. I think that needs to get rewritten to what is true customer value. And in a world where technology is more easily adoptable, what does that look like? And the final one is, I think education will have to have been completely overhauled. Like tertiary education, primary education, but also adult education. all of them need to be completely overhauled. And I have no idea who's going to do that. No one seems brave enough or bold enough. Someone's going to have to.
Mm-hmm.
My kids should be educated completely differently than I was. And as employees, we should all go through a mass education right now so that we stay relevant. And I've not yet seen that truly. It's not like an L&D program here or a course there. It's as the world materially changes, how do you help me stay relevant, right, as a contributing member of society? And I've not seen that happen yet, but it's going to have to.
Probably the lead will be taken by a Scandinavian country, I expect. But,
yeah, I'm with you. I think we should also, let's not go there in the winter, but in the summer, let's go and map out.
We need to call the Danes.
Yeah, with you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been so amazing to chat to you. We'd love to have you back in a couple of years to see how we're tracking towards the 2030 future you just mapped for us. Thanks again. Just epic to chat with you today on We Are Human Leaders. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of We Are Human Leaders with Dom Price from Atlassian. If you'd like to connect with Dom and learn more about his work, check out our show notes at www.wearehumanleaders.com. As human leaders, we are seeking to lead better, live truer, and be the change that we want to see in the world. This is how we recreate workplaces in a world where people and societies can truly flourish and thrive. We're human first, leader second. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.